I'm Zena Krogadal. Welcome to American Dreammakers on a Friday morning. Thank you for being here. I am excited to introduce my next guest to you. Cannot wait, but first we're going to do our intro. Here we go. Hello, hello, hello. I am back. Zena Krogadal here with American Dreammakers. Today we have a fantastic guest, Allison Turner. She is the owner and CEO of Batcat Media Group, formerly known as Batcat Media. She business consultants of South Florida and turnkey music studio. Allison Turner is a skilled professional who has accrued more than 25 years of experience in management, customer service, marketing, communications. She is passionate about setting and reaching goals, a passion that she developed during her time as a Division I college athlete, competing as part of the Northwestern University tennis team. Today, she oversees One Stop Shop, which houses the branding, website design, online marketing services, video production, music production, and business coaching. Allison earned her Bachelor of Arts degree at Northwestern and her Master of Business Administration at Florida Atlantic University, and she launched Business Consultants of South Florida, a division of Batcat Inc. in 2013, eventually buying out her partner in 2014 and becoming the sole owner of the company. She believes in living her life as a perpetual student, seeking out mentors, following business trends in order to better understand the world around her. Allison specializes in building comprehensive marketing strategies and online presence for companies and leaderships. She looks forward to confidence to the bright future ahead of Batcat Media. So I want to bring on Miss Allison. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good morning. How are you today?
Yeah, afternoon on my side of the world. But
afternoon. Good afternoon.
Yep. And we're on different sides of the world, 3 hours apart. So
yes, we are. How is it there in Florida?
It's actually raining now, but we're heading into rainy season soon. So we've been getting a little more rain the last week or so, which we could use anyway. But otherwise, it's beautiful. As you know, the rain usually comes through pretty quickly, and then we get back to the sunshine and blue skies, which is why I live here. So
yes, the sunshine and blue skies. Now, what part of South Florida are you in?
I'm in Delray Beach, so East Coast.
So you're close to the beach too? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm less than a mile from the beach, so probably about 0.6, 0.8 miles from the beach. So I can walk there. I actually took a walk earlier today and I do a loop that's about 2.75 miles and walked by the ocean. So yeah.
How nice. That's good therapy right there, right off in the morning, walking up around the beach there.
Yeah. Yeah. Anytime you can hear the waves crash, even if you can't see them, because sometimes I walk really early when it's still dark out, and unless the moon's out or something's out, you can't really see the ocean. And I don't really like to go on the beach when it's pitch black, but I can hear it often if you hear the waves coming in. So it's just that nice peaceful sound.
Do you like to walk barefoot as well? Do you take your shoes off and walk around?
Sometimes it depends on, if I come to the beach, I drive to the beach and then I park a car and I go on the beach, because then I'll just leave shoes in the car. If I'm walking from my house, usually it's a longer walk, and I'm more intentionally going to get exercise as opposed to going just to walk on the beach. Not to say you can't get exercise on the beach, because that's actually pretty good exercise, but I hate getting sand in the shoes. So then I have to carry the shoes.
Yeah.
a little weird that way. So
I understand. I was just curious because the sand in the beach feels really nice, but I'm kind of the same way. Sometimes I'm like, I think I'm going to keep my shoes on, but either way, it feels nice. It feels nice, and to breathe in that air and the scenery. You can't beat the scenery. So no. I appreciate so much, Allison, that you're taking the time out of your busy schedule and last minute. No doubt. Unfortunately, my last guest just was not able to be here this morning. We had to reschedule. So I'm excited to hear all about who you are, why you do what you do. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
So, I mean, I own a company, Bad Cat Media Group, which you talked about in the introduction. And I've had the company for it's probably close to 10 years now. And I originally started it with a business partner back in 2012. And we worked well initially in business and then figured out pretty quickly that we had kind of different paths that we wanted to go. And it wasn't going to be a pretty path together. But I'm very thankful because, I think she really prompted the start of this business. We started as Business Consultants of South Florida, as you mentioned, which was a consulting company. So it was really building from her skills. So she had owned an advertising company, and my skills from the MBA and some of the work I had done to put those together to start that company. And I probably wouldn't have started a company like that on my own. So I am, grateful from that standpoint. And then kind of went on to run the company myself. And that was an interesting thing because when you run a company, you're always kind of, you have that balance you have to strike between, keep moving forward and then something stops you and then you kind of fall backwards and you take the 2 steps forward, the 1 step back. And it's not always roses out there when you're running a company. And I think, I learned early on that I had to keep going forward. So when she and I were in business together, I was the person out networking and bringing in potential clients, but she was the closer on all of it. And I don't think it really occurred to me until like after we had split, and I had taken the company over that I'm like, oh crap, no, I'm the closer on this. So I have to be, not only the person bringing the potential clients in, but the actual one closing the business. And, anytime you are doing something new in entrepreneurship, it's always brings you some initial fear. I mean, I shouldn't say anytime, but a lot of times, especially when you're a newer business owner and you haven't owned a business before, it's that initial fear that you have to overcome. And so I figured out how to kind of move forward through that. And I'm going to actually enjoy sales, which I never thought I would ever say, because, you always get people that are like, oh no, I don't, I'm not a salesperson, because people have a negative connotation to selling. And, whatever you want to believe, we're all salespeople. So whether you actually are in a sales job by owning a business or working for someone else as a salesperson, or you're just a regular person, I mean, you're always selling because you're always, talking to people and compromising and getting what you want. And, whether it's a marriage, whether it's a child, whatever it is, there's always some kind of selling in the world. And I think that's what sometimes people don't realize. And I probably didn't realize at the time, but, then the journey just continued. And when my fiance and I got together, Jack Schulman, he brought a whole different piece to the business. So he brought in the video production side. So he had a company that did video production, and that's a huge marketing piece. And so I'd kind of been looking for someone that could do that. And so he started doing it for me. But then we realized, instead of having 2 different companies, why don't we just pull them together? So then he came under my company at that time. And then we kind of pieced a bigger company together. So I had Business Consultants of South Florida. I had added a second division, which was the online marketing division. And then the third division, which we'd created, was Turnkey Music Studio. So he's a musician as well. So we all of a sudden had 3 divisions. I had 4 websites, 3 divisions. And this is not that long ago, 3 years ago. And I was like, okay, now I got a lot of stuff I got to keep up on this company. So, and I kind of skipped over a little bit how the marketing piece came into being. So I had the consulting company, and we live in Delray Beach, Florida. And Delray Beach is a relatively small town. I mean, it's compared to other big cities in Florida. So I'm kind of like halfway between West Palm Beach and Fort Lauderdale. And, the population is probably around 70,000 now, but it's a very entrepreneurial town. So most of the businesses here, I don't know the exact number these days, but at the time it was about 85% of the businesses were 4 employees or less. So not big corporations, you could go to Boca Raton and get big corporations. Fort Lauderdale, West Palm, you would have the bigger corporations. So when we were doing consulting, you would look at that and you'd look at their branding and their website and things like that when you're trying to build like a marketing strategy, and you'd be like, yeah, you may not want to use that website. That's maybe not the best, either they built it themselves or they had done the branding themselves or whoever had done it. It just didn't fit like where they were going. So we ended up starting to do some of that online stuff, like the branding and the website design. And so I continued to build that out because I realized that's really some of what I love to do. And that's how like that second division came into place, because at some point it didn't make sense to keep it under the consulting division any longer. And then, as I said, then we got to the 3 divisions and decided to kind of consolidate everything back under one umbrella, which was Batcat, or is Batcat Media Group, which is where we are today.
Got it. Wow. So there was a couple things that you touched on that I'd like to circle back to a little bit. Partnerships. So you mentioned, your first partnership didn't quite work out. Yeah. It just wasn't, sounds like just wasn't synergistic, didn't quite match, that kind of thing, which happens. Yeah. And sometimes you don't know that till you go along for a little while. But yet at the same time, you went on, to kind of figure it out on your own, which I applaud you for, because that is scary. Now you're treading water by yourself. But along the way, you end up finding other people to help you along the way. So tell us a little bit about how you have found, or how that experience has really helped you to realize that it's all about the right partnerships. Any tips on finding the right partnerships?
I think you have to know what you're looking for, and you have to be clear that not everyone's going to be the right partnership, and always define what partnership is for you. So, when this company was first started, the partnership was 50-50, and I would probably never do that again. So currently, because at that point, there's no one person making a final decision. If I was ever going to go that close together again, it would be 51-49 if I was ever going to do something. And it would have to be really clear to me that's the best direction to happen.
That's great you say that, because I actually heard Grant Cardone say that. I think it was an Undercover Billionaire, that you never ever go 50-50. It always has to be 51 or 49 at least. Somebody has to have more ownership than the other. Interesting.
Yeah. I would definitely never do that again. And I think you just have to figure out like how much control do you ultimately want to have in the business or in, whatever you're doing. And, and I like control. So I will be perfectly honest. I do like control and like having that control. So,
so you're 51. 51%.
Well, I'm 100 at this point, but so I've kept control of the ownership at this point. That's just how it's worked out. I mean, we've had conversations, and I think I operate pretty well. And I think if Jack was on here, if he's listening, like he's really good at what he does, which is like a video producer and audio engineer. Like he's really good at, he can make you be anywhere in the world, doing anything on a video. I mean, like he can do amazing effects. He can do all that. And he's always told me, and as I said, if he was on here, he would agree, like that he's really good as a worker person, like as like a producer. And I think you have to have a really strong, like for me, like I like the balance between, and I've always liked the balance between, doing whatever it is. So in this case, managing clients and doing, the hands-on stuff of running a company and also being that 30,000 foot person where you're also, kind of controlling the direction of where it's going and like, okay, what's the next step and what needs to happen to make that next step happen. So, that's kind of where I see that, he and I have like a difference, and he's really good at, creating, like he's launching his own TV show, for example, and kind of thinking of all the big pieces he wants in that. But again, it's more of that creative production side that he's launching. So
that's great. That's awesome. And the other thing that you had mentioned, and that you also have ended up expanding your business, so you have several businesses, not just one. And so that, for a lot of people who aren't entrepreneurial mindset, that sounds awful scary. And in even those that maybe they own a small business, it's hard for them to fathom owning multiple businesses. How do you do it?
Well, and ultimately, this is one business. So in reality, this is one business. So even though I had divisions at the time, and I had 3 different websites and 3, like I was still filing, we were filing one tax return. We were filing, like everything was under the corporation. So I've always kept the corporation that we started with back in 2012 or 13 or whenever it was. I've always kept that corporation. So I've always added DBAs, which is doing business as, underneath the corporation, because I wanted the longevity. And, that's the other thing. If you ever want to sell a business down the road, you need the longevity. So it doesn't matter how old Bad Cat Media Group, the DBA is, it matters how old is my corporation name, which is, still tied to the start date, which again, I don't even remember if it's 2012 or 2013. So it's still tied to that. So I've always had the one corporation. I've always run things under that corporation. Just because it didn't really make sense to separate and have 2 different, we talked about it at the time, and I kind of looked into it. I'm like, do I want 2 different tax returns and 2 different, so you're running different divisions, but it's still one business, and, from a financial side, it makes more sense as long as the businesses are all synergistic, which they are. So even though they can stand alone, a website design piece can stand alone, but I can also bring in the video production, or maybe they're a musician that needs a website, so they need the auto engineering piece, which is what Jack offers. Maybe they're, a startup company, so they need the business coaching, but then we're also doing the branding and the website design. So they're all synergistic pieces that can go together, but they can also stand alone, if that makes sense.
That does make sense. That's great. And it sounds like you said, it's a one-stop shop. So you're able to tackle a lot of things under just your business. So that's fantastic. And you have done a lot of things along the way that has given you the experience to open up this business, right? So I guess tell us how each of those experiences have contributed to you. In ways that you didn't even expect. I know, sometimes we think about, how did my job at McDonald's really prepare me for the future? But yet it does for a lot of people.
Yeah, because it's interesting, because when I went back and did my MBA, I had been working in tennis. So I was working in tennis. I taught the sport for many years. And I also was more in the administrative side of it too. So again, I always liked kind of the combination of the challenges of the administrative side, which, led to like, how do you get more kids in the program and all that type of thing. But also the teaching side, which was, more the one-on-one and things like that. So I always like kind of the combination, just like you would run a business today. But when I was thinking about like, have I outlived my role in this sport, because I played tennis growing up. I played Division I college tennis for Northwestern. And, have I kind of gone past where I want to be? Because I didn't see myself continuing until, some people do their whole career in tennis and they become a director of tennis, and it's a fairly decent career. If you work for a country club or something like that, you can make decent money. And, but I didn't see myself going that direction at the time. But then I was like, okay, I've done this for the last 14 years. So what the heck do I do? Like, how do I, kind of recreate myself? And that's what prompted me to go get the MBA, because I was like, you know what, I was in that mindset of like, okay, education, that's where I need to go. So I applied to a program here at Florida Atlantic University, which is right down the street from me. And Florida Atlantic happened to get in the Final Four this year in men's basketball. So for anyone out there. Go Owls. But anyway, I applied because they had a program that got you an MBA, but it got you a focus in sports management, which is really because I thought I would stay in sports. I love sports. I grew up in sports. I like to watch sports and all those types of things. So when I was looking at programs, I looked at University of Florida's. They have an executive MBA, which is really good, and you can do it mainly online and just go, I think, once a quarter or once a semester or something to the campus, which is about 5 hours away from here. So I looked at that program too, and I think I can't remember if I applied to that. And then I really liked the whole Florida Atlantic program. You had to go full time. You had to intern the entire time. So it was a full-time program. So I had gone, when I did that, I went to part-time in tennis. So I pretty much left the administrative side and I just would teach some, which helped with the income side. And I would teach, and then I would do the MBA classes. And then I interned 3 different places. So I interned in a Lynn University, which is a Division II program here in Boca Raton. So I interned in their athletic department. I interned for the Florida Panthers, which is the ice hockey team down in a professional ice hockey team in Florida. And then I interned for a tennis tournament here that's in Delray Beach, men's ATP Tour tournament. So I learned a lot there because I learned what I didn't want to do in sports. Learned exactly what I didn't want to do in sports. And I learned, just different, because I got to see different ways of doing things. Because, the Florida Panthers are very corporate because it's an NHL team. So originally I thought, I want to go work for the Miami Dolphins. I'm a big football person. And so I was like, well, maybe I don't want to work for the Miami Dolphins because I didn't really like the corporate thing. So that kind of gave me a pretty good feel of that. And I liked Lynn University, which was Division II, but I didn't really see myself at a D1 school, which is what I actually went to. Because again, it gets a little bit more corporate. It's a little stricter. It's a little, but I like, D2 had kind of a combination of things I enjoyed. And then the tennis tournament was really ideal, but again, they weren't really hiring, and then I'd have to move. And so anyway, that gave me a good feel of things. It still didn't really point me in where I wanted to go and where I was going to go with things. But I think, what it did do is just give me a little more confidence that, once that piece fell into place, which was when I went into business, with this, my first business partner, that we could do that. And we were good at that, even though I didn't stay in the sports. I have sports clients today. So I have some of my big clients are like NFL flag leagues out in California, things like that. So I have larger clients that are in the world of sports, but all my clients are not sports clients, obviously. So I think you can take different things, and you don't necessarily need to go back and get your MBA. I was under that impression when I did it because I had been in tennis for 14 years. And I was like, okay, what am I going to do here? But knowing what I know now, I would probably tell someone something different and steer someone a different direction from that, unless they really wanted to do that. I don't think any education doesn't hurt, but I'm not a believer that you have to have like the MBA or you have to have the, whatever degree to kind of move a different direction, unless you want to be a lawyer, and then obviously you have to have a law degree, but right. Things like that. So,
right. And I also see you, how we met was at the Rockstar Speaker Summit. And I've also, I believe, interacted, you belong to other mastermind groups, gone to conferences. And so yeah, I see that as an entrepreneur, you're out there really networking and learning from others. How important is that in your entrepreneurship?
I think it's extremely important. I totally, anytime you can get to go to a conference where you can meet different people, where you can interact with different people, learn from speakers, I think is like gold. I would say now, like I'm still on, like Florida Atlantic's email list. And so every once in a while I get, get your certificate in executive, whatever. And I'm like, no, I don't need that. But I would much rather learn from someone that's actually out in the field doing what I want to do, or doing what I am doing. Maybe they're at a higher level, whatever it is. or maybe they've encountered different challenges that I can help them with, or vice versa, challenges that I'm hitting that they can help me with. So I think that bond, because I don't think anyone really understands until you become a business owner and until you become an entrepreneur. I don't think there's any way to really know what to expect until you do it, because I wouldn't have, I've interviewed multiple people on my own podcast, and, it's like when you first start, depending on what kind of funding you have, do you have capital in the bank to make it happen? Depending on all that, you are doing everything oftentimes. If you have maybe a lower startup budget, maybe you're, I see people that are still doing their own brand on Canva now because Canva's made it easier. Is that good? It depends on who the person is and how talented they are, to be honest, and how clear they are on their target market. So I'll never say like, no, you definitely don't want to do your own brand, but some people can do it, but I would say it's a smaller percentage of people. So, but like you're doing everything initially, like you're doing, even if you're like getting the website built by a company like mine, maybe you're the one that's tweaking the website because you don't want to pay an ongoing fee. Maybe you're the marketer, you're the salesperson, you're the implementer of whatever the service is, or the product is, so you're doing everything. So I think the best place to learn is from other people that are also in business, even if they're in a different business than you.
That's a good point. Even if there's some in a different industry than you are. And that's something that my husband and I decided this last year was, we're real estate agents. And we decided that we needed to just expand our horizons and start networking with people outside of the real estate industry. Right. And that has been a great experience because it has, our idea machine is flowing now, and, thinking of ways and doing things, and definitely add, so definitely hanging out with people like you really inspires, to increase our business in a different way, or a direction. So I applaud you for doing that for sure. And I'm noticing that the most successful entrepreneurs are the ones out there and continuing. They're not reclusive. They're not just sitting behind the desk all day long. They're out there doing things and interacting. So awesome for you. Do you also do speaking as well? Are you also a professional speaker?
I do some speaking. My goal is to get more into it. I haven't done a lot of focus on it. I know I'm speaking for like the Boca Chamber of Commerce, I think in August, in one of their, like they control a couple of towns here. They're South Florida Chamber of Commerce, but they have kind of offices in Boca Raton and then Boynton Beach. So I'm kind of in the middle between those two cities, so I'm speaking at something in Boynton Beach, in August. So my goal is to implement more of that, because I really want to go more towards bringing more entrepreneurs through the business coaching and through the speaking and all that side of things. Because, consulting was one thing. When we first started the company, we were doing consulting. That's one thing. But, like what I didn't enjoy is doing business plans. I can do business plans. I can research them. I can do the financial stuff for a business plan if you need that. I can do all that, but it's not like my love, of doing it. So do I think people need business plans? Yes and no. I think I think you can have a smaller business plan. So yeah, I think you have to have a roadmap, and you have to know where the heck you want to go. But I think you don't have to have a 50-page business plan unless you're going after funding, unless you're, a restaurant, you're a brick and mortar, you have a huge amount of overhead. If you're a service-based company that is going to start out of a home office or a virtual office or something like that, I don't know that you need like a 50-page business plan. Do you need some kind of roadmap? Absolutely. And that's really what I enjoy working on, is like coaching with, coaching someone in creating that roadmap, and like, how do we create the roadmap of where you want to go, with the end in mind. So starting with the end in mind and then backtracking from there.
That's great. Hello, Shelly Jean. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, Shelly's a friend of mine. Hey, Shelly.
Oh. It's always nice when our friends show up to support us.
Yeah, exactly. She must have seen it on my page. It's working.
Yeah, it's working. So I want to kind of even go back a little bit further, just I always think it's always interesting when you look at, ask people about their childhood, what were some highlights of memories that you have that really probably inspired you to become the entrepreneur you are today? I mean, is there anything, that you could have a memory of that you said, I'm going to do things different, or I'm going to do things better? Or
I would say my childhood probably didn't impact entrepreneurship. And why I say that is because, my mother was a stay-at-home mom. So once I was born, like, she never worked again. My father worked in different industries. He always worked for someone. So I wasn't around entrepreneurship per se. Even the people, their friends, were working for other people. My father did well. I mean, he was probably in the I guess what you would term middle class type of thing today. So I don't know that there was anything there that really inspired entrepreneurship. It wasn't ever on my radar per se. I mean, probably until I'm trying to think what really impacted that. I think when I was really seeking to figure out what that next step was, that's when certain things kind of came into light, and maybe I met some people. And but like in my childhood, because I was so much into tennis, like my life was pretty much like school, tennis, and I did some backstage theater stuff too in high school. So like it was like kind of those three things, and then and that was pretty much it. So, and tennis, I always had a love-hate relationship. I shouldn't say always, but towards the end of my career in tennis, I had a love-hate relationship with the sport. So I think that impact, if I had to say if there was something that impacted, I would say the tennis would have helped to some degree, because, when you're on a tennis court, you're out there alone, basically. So you either kind of like, you're playing well, you're not playing well, whatever it is, like you're making the decision alone. Tennis is one of those things that's not really a team sport. I mean, in college, it becomes a team sport. But when I was growing up, it was always, you were playing tournaments to bring your ranking up so you could get the college scholarship. So, that's the game. It's not like, you're playing soccer or you're one person out of how many people are on a soccer team, or football, or whatever the sport is. So tennis is a little bit different. So if I had to pick anything that was impactful in some way, and I think the one thing I've seen with tennis, so when I stopped playing tennis, so I was a junior, after my junior year in college, I played through my junior year. So I was on full scholarship, and my parents were overly involved in tennis. Super involved, always at every match, and not always positively involved, particularly my mother. So my mother was, you hear the stereotypical, dance mom or whatever. Like I had the tennis mom. Luckily she's not on Facebook, although some of her friends are. But I had that stereotypical tennis mom. So, if I was winning, I was fabulous. If I was not doing so well, or I had an off day, I was not so fabulous. So it was kind of that up and down type of thing. So I think the one thing that I've realized from my tennis career, so when after my junior year, I pretty much asked my parents not to come to my senior year matches, because they would, even though I was in Chicago, they were in Indianapolis. They would travel to every single match I had, pretty much, unless we were in California, because sometimes we would fly to California, or sometimes we would fly to Florida for matches, like for spring break or special tournaments or something like that. But any of the Big Ten stuff, since I was in Big Ten conference, they would travel to. So it could be 3 hours away, it could be an hour and a half away, it could be 6 hours away. Like they would drive to it. Doesn't matter where it was. So I had asked them, like, can you maybe not come to every single match, my senior year? And they pretty much refused. So I just walked away from it and said, okay. And it was like a very clear decision. And I think, when I look back, there's been certain times in my life where things have been very clear, and probably only a handful of those times where it's been like, where you're at that complete calm and that complete peace of like, yes, this is the right thing to do. No second guessing, very few times do I get that, where you're not like, was that really the right decision? Things like that. So I think if I had to look back, tennis probably impacted, because I see that sometimes in my business today, because I'm very clear of like, today I'm much more confident, and, and I've built that up by, creating those relationships and, helping people move forward in their business, and, consulting with people to help us move forward in our business, and working with coaches and having those relationships. So, as I said, I think that would be the one thing I would say, positive and negatively, I took from that helped in where I am today.
Yeah. And, parents are funny. And when we're teenagers, we have a different perspective on things for sure. Because my mom didn't show up to very many of my events, and I used to wish that she would, kind of thing. And, but then I did have a friend's mom who, when she showed up, it's kind of what you were saying. She was always, really involved. And if you're doing great, it was great. And if you weren't, it was like, what's wrong with you? Why are you messing up today? And, and so you're like, oh my goodness. So I can understand, what you were saying, as far as the pressure, of trying to not disappoint, along with trying to perform and just play your tennis the way you love it. So totally understand. But at the same time, it sounds like it did shape you and form you. So out of curiosity, you were saying that, your parents were not entrepreneurial, and they heard their friends were not entrepreneurial. So when you became an entrepreneur, did you have the support, or did the people around you have a hard time understanding what you were doing and why you were taking the risks you were taking? Or were they, I guess, how was the support system in that?
I have a pretty small family, so I don't have siblings. I don't have, like my aunt didn't have kids. My father was an only child. So like I have a pretty small family. I have some second cousins that live in the same area I live in. So they've always been supportive. And I have a pretty good relationship there. My father had passed away by the time I went into business. So I think he probably would have been supportive, because he was always, he was a big one on education. He was a big one, and he wasn't a big risk taker per se, but I think he would have been supportive. My mother doesn't always understand the business. So she, it's always funny, because like I've been in business for, as I said, probably close to 10 years. And even at year, maybe 8, she's like, what do you do exactly? I was like, all right. So it's just trying to break it down, and she's still not going to necessarily understand it fully, just because she didn't grow up in this era of online marketing. And so I just try and dumb it down. Like, okay, when you go on like Amazon's website, like we do simpler websites than that. Obviously we don't do a website like an Amazon website, but I'm just trying to like trying to explain to her what it is in kind of simple terminology that she understands, as opposed to like, we build websites. And she's like, what does that exactly mean? So, she's not been unsupportive, but I wouldn't say she's like, oh, well, how's everything going? Like, we don't really talk about it. I guess that's probably more what I would say at this point. My aunt, who's her sister, has been really good. We don't talk about it a ton, but she was a university professor. And so she's always supportive. She's always kind of supported whatever I've done, to some degree, but it's more like that silent support versus her being engaged all the time.
Yeah. Someone saying that my dad got real smart once I became a dad. Or actually, I guess I started coming to my sense. That's true.
Yep.
It's interesting, our family dynamics and how they end up really, shaping us, for sure. Hi, Eric. Thank you so much for being here, and we're so glad you are here. Thank you for the comments.
Thanks, Eric.
So, I have found, or as I've kind of gone to these groups, mastermind groups and conferences, and not only that, but when I was at the Turn It Up event in Orlando, Tim Story was one of the speakers, and he talked about how you had to be careful who you put in your green room. And the green room was an area that was very, you had your acquaintances and you have your friends and you have your family, but the green room was a very sacred room and who you really kept close, because if you put the wrong people in the green room, they can really crush your dreams and they can really crush the momentum that you have. And not everybody understands the entrepreneurial mindset, because
Right.
it is so different. And sometimes it is counterintuitive to what the majority of people who aren't, owning businesses and,
Right.
working for an employer. It's a very different world for sure. And
Yep.
so that's why I was curious, how your family supported you, because some people they just don't understand, so they don't know how to support you either. So
No, no. And I don't think, as I said, I think my father would have been supportive. I mean, I don't know if he would have understood or not, to be honest, but, but I think my mother doesn't fully understand it. But I mean, she's supportive as she can be. That's probably the best thing I'll say. I mean, I've always had kind of a small circle anyway, of really close, whether it's been entrepreneurship or not entrepreneurship, but friends, my closest friends, no more confidants, just because I was an only child. And so and I've always been more on the introverted side. So, when I would go out, it wasn't like I needed to be the life of the party. Like, some people are more that, which is fine. That's great for them. But I'm fine with, here's the close, like the close circle, like you're talking about the green room. And I think you can have like the close friends and then the close, and even sometimes friends don't necessarily understand it fully either, because, they're not entrepreneurs. I mean, one of the guests on my podcast I had was, she's only, what is she now? 24, 25 years old. And she came out of college during the pandemic. So she was like, she was the president of Penn State University, and Penn State University is a huge school. And she came out of college, and so it was in 2020. So she came out of college in 2020. So her last semester was, when everything shut down, she ended up going home, which was down here, even though she was at Penn State University. And her job offer, I guess she had a job offer. She wanted to move to New York City, and she had a job offer working for like an advertising company. And I guess it got rescinded because, people weren't hiring and you couldn't go into the offices, and like, how do you train somebody that's brand new out of college, and, all that type of thing. So she's like, okay, what do I do? Like, what's going on? And she ended up, and now both her parents are entrepreneurs. So she grew up in a very different household, only child, but both her parents are entrepreneurs. So very different household. And so she started her own company, like her own branding company, like fresh out of college. But, maybe a year later, but she moved to New York City, and she's, up there, and she's started her own magazine now too. And, so I think she's been in business a little over a year or two. I have to go back and look at the dates, but I mean, again, she had that support, that support system where they were like, okay, yeah, do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she's like, I wanted to go somewhere where no one knew me, but that had a lot of people, so I could just go knock on doors. And she's like, I can prove myself. I have no problem proving myself, because I know how to, go out there and talk to people. And, she's like, I would just say, hey, I think I can help you get more visibility. And she would come up with a whole plan for people before they ever even knew who she was. And that's how she would get in the door. And then that's how she got hired. But, she knew she had to work harder because she was young. She was right out of college. She didn't really have any job experience per se. And she was creating her own way.
That's awesome. Anita is asking, Allison, once you decided to take the entrepreneurial road, what was your biggest roadblock and what did it teach you?
Anita. Yeah, a friend of mine here in Delray. Hey, Anita. So I would say the biggest roadblock I've encountered is more fear, like a lot of entrepreneurs will encounter. And it's not necessarily a roadblock. I think it's an ongoing, because anytime you're in business for yourself, and now that like Jack and I are in business together, obviously now it's not like he works somewhere else where he gets a steady paycheck. Well, the paycheck comes from here, so now the two of us, I mean, Zena, I know you can relate to that since you and your husband are both in real estate, but, like the paychecks coming from one source, and I think there's always been, especially as you expand, you take on more expense, whatever that is, you need a new piece of equipment, and I mean, we have an office space, studio space here in Delray Beach because I need a video studio. I don't necessarily need to work from here, even though I do work from here quite a bit. But we have the video studio and the audio engineering studio here. So, so as your expenses get higher, when you get more involved in the business, I think there's always that piece of fear. And I think it's really taken me probably 2/3 of the time to really and I shouldn't say get over it, because there's, I think fear can be a healthy thing. And so it's not always a bad thing. But it's really like, how do you, like I was talking about the decision I made after my junior year in college of like, yeah, this is the right place. And there was no fear. There was no, it was just like, I was perfectly at peace with it. And so like, how do you bring that piece into your life today? Even when, you're looking at something that's like a bigger, thing coming up, and you're like, okay, where's that next client coming from? Cause we have ongoing clients, and then you obviously always need to replenish certain clients too. So, and you always want to, as an entrepreneur, I think you're always trying to get better at what you do and bring in more revenue, or bring in more, be able to impact people in a bigger way. So in order to do that, obviously you're taking more chances, you're bringing more revenue in, maybe you're doing more coaching programs, things like that. Yeah, true, Eric. Response to the fear is definitely the, one of my favorite quotes is, let's see if I can actually say it right. I may have to look it up so I actually say it right. But one of my favorite quotes is from Charles Swindoll, and he talks about, and I always use that quote, life is 10%, what is it? 10%. I can find the stupid quote. And it really speaks to what Eric was saying. Find my quote. Life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you react to it. So like when people ask me for my favorite quote, like that is the quote I say, because I think it is how you react to a situation 100%. And I think that's probably the biggest thing I've learned is like, even when you have that roadblock, it's always like, okay, what's the path forward? So you have that fear come up for whatever reason. And how do you move through the fear and get to the other side of it? I'm pretty good. And I think that's the other thing. I'm always like, I'm pretty solution focused. So I'm always like, okay, here's a roadblock that just came up, and, whatever it is, maybe one of your ongoing clients canceled. We had that happen last year. And maybe they canceled. Okay. It is what it is. So like, how do you, like, what do you do to pivot and go a different direction? How do you replace that revenue? And how do you keep moving forward? So I think that's where it's just, remaining solution focused, recognizing, if there is fear, like recognizing it and just going through it, because, ultimately every, new day is a new opportunity, a new hour is a new opportunity. You could meet someone different. You can have a new client, you could get a new referral, whatever it is, it's new opportunities. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that's helped me, Anita, to answer your question, help me get through things is like, here's the roadblock, but what's that next step? Like what's, because you can do one of two things. You can either like pull back, and then that's not going to help you get anywhere, or you can be like, okay, it is what it is. And now how do I push through this and go to the next level?
Yeah. Well, I know your time is very limited because you are such a busy gal running all these divisions of your business. And again, I really appreciate everything you have shared today. And I think you've really helped a lot of people on here. And so really appreciate it. You guys, if you want to get a hold of Allison and learn more about her, go to her website, batcatmedia.com. And get in contact with her, and she can absolutely help you. She's a remarkable woman, as you can hear. So please, if you're watching the replay, go ahead and share this out. We'd love to get Allison's message out there, because she is not only somebody who is succeeding her business, but she wants to see you succeed. And so her message is going to help a lot of people. So we want to make sure that people get to hear it. So thank you once again for joining us today. And gosh, you have so much to share. So one of these days, I'd love to get you back on here again and delve on a couple of other topics. So
yeah, be happy to be on, and I'll have to get you on my podcast too.
Thank you. I would enjoy that as well. So, all right, Allison, we'll have a wonderful rest of your day, and we will chat soon.
Perfect.
All right, guys, thank you so much for tuning in today. And we just really enjoyed Allison so much. And yes, please go ahead and share. If you're not a part of the American Dream Makers Facebook group, please go ahead and join. And also, we're on YouTube. Go ahead and like and subscribe our YouTube channel. And I'm also on LinkedIn as well. So I will get back to you on next Wednesday. So definitely tune in to American Dream Makers, and we will see you then. Have a good one. Bye.